the topic of this lecture is, as you see, RED Vienna, Architecture of Art Deco, Functionalism and Constructivism. Well, it's too many terms, right? So many words. Maybe for some of you they're not new, for some of you maybe they're new and scaring, but don't worry, this is just the terms that help us to understand what stylistic, artistic feature and movement the certain building belongs to. So it's actually nothing really problematic. Yeah, we will find the features of each of the style in almost every building that I will show you today. So why I decided to start with these terms, because this is very important for us to understand the context in which the architecture of that time was being developed. So I am going to show you this slide first. Okay. What are you seeing now? You are seeing two old photographs showing the salon, so the main hall of the building that was created for the international exposition of applied arts. So decorative arts, art decorative. This exhibition was held in 1925 in Paris, and this year, 1925, because of this exhibition, is associated with the beginning of the style Art Deco. Art Deco. It's written Art Deco. Let me show you. Yeah? Art Deco, written like that, but pronounced in French Art Deco. Arts, yeah, Deco, decorative. So official beginning is 1925, but it doesn't mean that before 1925 we didn't have any Art Deco-ish, yeah, Deco-ish. So the buildings or artworks that have similar stylistic features as Art Deco, real, yeah, genuine Art Deco objects after 1925. But this year you should keep in mind as a real official beginning of the style. So today's building that I'm going to show you, they were built after that year. So most of them, they are 1927, 1929. So this is the most flourishing period where most of the Art Deco buildings were created, and I will show you some of them later, not only in Vienna, but also in the USA, in France, for example. What else we should keep in mind? Yeah, what else parallelly was happening at this time to understand what was the context, where and when the socialistic Red Vienna architecture appeared. Also very important to keep in mind that at the same time we are having in the USSR, in Russia, in Ukraine, yeah, so USSR, we have very flourishing and popular architectural movement called constructivism, and you see some examples of those buildings in Russia in different cities. Most of them, they are Moscow, St. Petersburg. You see that the buildings are formed from formed of several geometrical figures, blocks, triangles, squares, rectangulars, spheres, and they all built the almost abstract composition. So the architecture of constructivism was not just the functional architecture, but also somehow a message, a philosophy of a new world, new era, because this architecture was supposed to be the architecture for the working class people, for proletarians, for people of new mentality. Some more examples. For example, here you can see also an old poster. The ones of you who can read Cyrillic can see that it's written Fabrica Kuchnia. Fabrica means fabric, plant, factory. Kuchnia is kitchen, like Küche in German. What is this? It's a very new concept that was developed in several communist socialistic countries, and especially in the USSR. It is the concept of huge plant institution that whose function, whose role was to prepare the food for the working class living or working in this neighborhood. So why was it important? Why it symbolized the time? Because woman, you see the woman on the on this poster, you see the female worker, because women, they became emancipated and they became also independent from men, and they worked as much as men did, and they earned money. They also had the opportunity to have education and so on. They didn't have to have families, didn't have to have children and so on. And they also shouldn't, because of that, they worked so much, and they shouldn't bother so much of cooking the meal for themselves and for their family members. So those huge kitchens, their aim was to liberate women, to give them opportunity to, besides work, maybe to have some hobbies, some leisure. It was also time when there were many clubs. There was time, of course, when socialism was not only in terms of political changes, but also in real social integration between people, different social groups and professions. And of course, for all those activities, people needed time, and those factories, they helped to not to waste the time on cooking. Also, there were public laundries, public bath, and so on. The same things we will see also in Vienna, and not only in Vienna, in most of this, actually in many cities, also in Berlin, for example, in Rotterdam. And also, what was also important, that those activities, those movements, they, of course, it was also a kind of propaganda, because they had to put the proletarians, to raise them, uprise them, to put them on the level of the leading social class. This is why almost all the buildings, all the also city buildings, for example, clubs and so on, theaters, cinemas, they were created for them, for working class. And we, in 1920s, 1930s, we don't see so many buildings that were actually created for aristocrats or for noble class. Yeah, this was not the time. Okay, and also I would like to show you one more classical example of constructivism. It's the building in Moscow, but created, erected by one of the most famous architects of the 20th century, Le Corbusier. Especially from looking at this picture, you can see the composition. So constructivism is sort of synonym and rhyme to suprematism or cubism in painting. So you see those blocks of figures, everything is a little bit maybe futuristic for that time especially, but still very functional, convenient, comfortable for people, and conveys a certain message, certain ideology. Let's go inside and see what is there. Almost abstract image. If some of you were at the campus, at the library of University of Economics, Wirtschaftsuniversität in Vienna, the library built by Zaha Hadid, probably you noticed some similarities. And you see that even though Zaha Hadid built it, I believe it was 2013 or 2016, 2015, you see that already in 20s, 30s, Le Corbusier elaborated this idea. And also notice that you almost don't see the stairs here, only those forgot the name. I forgot the term. Okay, I will remember now. And those, you see those spiral ways, yeah, that lift to the second and to the third floor. And this was created for, of course, for functional use, because we need to have a very easy access to all the stories, especially if we carrying some, if we are holding some, for example, carriage, some cabin, yeah. Okay, and one more building by Le Corbusier is actually the apartment block housing unit. The original name is Unité d'habitation in Marseille. This is what is most connected, associated, yeah, with what I'm going to show you today, because those buildings, except the one, they are all housing units, super blocks of flats, of apartments. And in 1950s, Le Corbusier invented the certain idea of the, I would say it's like Lego construction. Look at this scheme, this picture in the left, you see that each flat is, what is it? Yeah, each flat contains 2 or 3 stories. The size is not so big, but still we see that there is 3 levels of flat, and each unit is placed on the next one, so they are like really like bricks of Lego, and before them and under the second floor there is a corridor. You can see here. So this is the corridor and the doors to each flat. Then you go inside, you go, this is the room, then you go upstairs, and here is the second room that is roof for this corridor. And the second room has access to the window, to the light. And this Marseille Unité d'Habitation was the example for the future projects by Le Corbusier and the other architects. So in the 50s, it was the second wave of socialist, democratic housing program, and of course it was the second wave of functionalism. And you see that it's quite a simple composition, but yet graphic and quite, I would say, even refined. What is important that already in such houses, besides the flats, besides the rooms, there were also some communal units, communal areas, like communal laundry rooms, communal bathrooms. Also, there was an area, leisure area, there was a garden, kindergarten. If the building is big, then also some medical cabinets, shops, restaurants, cafes, and so on. So this idea of a city inside a city in the beginning appeared in 1920s. So in Vienna or in the USSR, for example, I will check if you left any comments. Railings, probably, yes. I forgot the word. I would sometimes it just runs away from me, you know. I sometimes just, okay, don't worry. Tazini Show asks, how long will this lecture, how long will it be? I would say that 1.5 hours. So we started at around 7 p.m. in Vienna, depends on when you watch it, where you watch it, and we started maybe 10 minutes later, because before we were talking and checking if everything is running. So I would say that in around 1 hour we will finish, definitely. Okay. And let's now have a look at Viennese architecture, because of course when we talk about social democratic architecture, RED, Viennese architecture, first of all we should consider the local context. And I would like to show you one building that any Viennese knows. Yeah, I know that among my audience there are people who are not from Vienna, from Austria, but those of you who live here definitely have seen this building, maybe even visited it. And of course, if you haven't visited it yet, I highly recommend to do it. This is the Postspa Case by Otto Wagner. Postspa Case is a postal savings bank service. Yeah, so it's a bank, building of bank. Otto Wagner. Who is Otto Wagner? Well, it's the main architect of the age, yeah, the turn of the 19th and the 20th century. The father of Jugendstil in Vienna, the main and the most famous Jugendstil slash Art Nouveau, modern, modernismo, liberty, and so on, style. In Vienna, in German-speaking countries, we use the term Jugendstil. Literal translation is the style of youth or young style. Yeah? So what is this building? Why I decided to show you this building, not some other more famous buildings by Otto Wagner? Because look at the dates. It's 1904, 1906. It's the time of Jugendstil. No doubts, yeah? But Otto Wagner, the one who before liked all those floral ornaments, all this golden, liberating decorations and decorative motifs. He already in 1906 erected the building that has almost called the war to Jugendstil, yeah? Because look at this building, we don't see any of the traditional Jugendstil elements. First of all, we see this strict geometry, vertical and horizontal lines. Also, we see the gray color, very functional, very brutal. And look also at the roof. You see these elements that a little bit, yeah, reminds of some pyramid shapes and so on. This is all what will be in fashion in 1920s. So today we will be mentioning the architects who erected the housing units in Vienna, like Karl-Marxhof, Romanshof, yeah, and others. They all were students of Otto Wagner, followers of him. So this architecture of 20s, 30s, Art Deco time, social democratic time, it was the generation of students of Otto Wagner. It's very interesting because even so he started his career as even architect of historicism, yeah, eclectics, very posh, elegant and sophisticating architecture of the Austrian Empire time. And he ended up as a proto-Art Deco, proto-functionalist. Another architect that you should keep in mind when you talk about this functionalism / Art Deco time is Adolf Loos. Adolf Loos is also an Austrian architect. And this is a building on Michaelplatz in Vienna, in the very center. So literally on the opposite side of the imperial residence. So here, actually, there is a Hofburg. Hofburg is the palace of Habsburgs. And look at this building, even compared to the Postspa Case, we still here see some decorative elements and also sculpture and so on. Here we don't see anything. Just ignore those flowers. This was not supposed to be in 1910. Adolf Loos, he was also, I would say, I don't know, writer, critic, art critic would be maybe a more correct word to describe his activity. And he wrote several articles and books, and his most famous one is Ornament und Verbrechen, which means ornament, decoration, and crime. So he propagated the simple, plain architecture without any decorative elements. And look, for example, at the windows, you see there are no frames, no sandriks. Sandrik is this part that is usually over the window. No gables, no frontons. And look at the buildings around. Yeah, there are lots of little sculptural, stucco or stone carving elements. So this is still Jugendstil time, but it's completely different aesthetic, and also a concept was different. Here are some photos of the interior. We're not talking today about Adolf Loos because look at the time he died. Yeah, he actually witnessed this movement. So yeah, but still he was too posh, too expensive for the movement of Red Vienna. Why? Because he chooses the most expensive materials. Yeah, there was lack of ornaments, but look at this wooden part. Also he used marble of different types, metal, of course. Sometimes even he used gold or silver. And also why he doesn't belong to this movement, because his clients were, who, of course, the businessmen. So this certain building, now it's a bank office, but it was created for the main fashion brand Atelier, and among his clients were different businesses. Yeah, also he constructed private houses for rich people. So completely different ideology. So he worked for this second class, but definitely not for the third one, not for the third class. And also look at one interesting building by Adolf Loos. It's so-called American bar or Loos bar. He was in trip in America, and he created the bar that was influenced by the typical American bars with such high tables, bar tables, and high bar chairs. This was the first example, first time when in Vienna, in Austria, or maybe even in Europe, I don't know for sure, this type of bars appeared. Of course, this also what is, of course, yeah, I mean, of course, because yeah, we know what time he was working in, and at that time this, of course, we know that there was a movement of suffragists, of womanhood, and so on, and still, yet this bar was only for men until the middle of the 20th century. So it was completely against of all this equality ideas. And one example of his private house, even two examples. One is in Vienna and one in Prague. Okay, I will check if you have any questions. Okay. If you have questions, of course, please write. So let's now start with the Red Vienna architecture. Okay, now you can see now at this photo, on this photo, the most famous building of that time, the symbol of this communal architecture movement. It's karl-marx-hof. The architect Karl was the student of Otto Wagner, and he was also author of some other buildings, apartment housing complexes at that time. What is peculiar is that this house belongs to the biggest, the longest apartment buildings of all times, so of the world. Yeah, it's 1200 meter long. Look at this composition. This is all one house. Look at this interesting picky, like step-like composition. So it's not a monotone building. This is the plan of it. So what we are seeing now, it's the typical superblock complex. What does it mean, superblock? It means the complex, so connected, yeah, parts of the house. You see, they're all connected to each other, so we can consider this as one building. And these houses, they form the closed complex composition of several yards, Höfe, yeah. So this is why most of the buildings, the apartments, houses in Vienna, they called Hof, Höfe, yeah. So Hof is yard. You see here, yeah. So each of those yards, they are like little neighborhoods, little areas, and in each yard, besides the apartment houses, there were also some communal complexes, some communal areas, as I already mentioned: kindergartens, laundries, clinics, cafes, shops, libraries, and of course playgrounds and so on. So Karl-Marx-Hof was considered to be, as actually like other big complexes, was considered to be a town, a city inside the city. Let's have a look at next photo. Here you can see that, yeah, this is the, here, all this till the end. It's one house. Here is the metro station. So once you are in Vienna, please visit this complex. It's really worthy. And yeah, and what is important, we see that this area is quite far from the city center. How far? I would say that, I mean, by public transport now it's like 15 minutes, but still for that time it was quite far. It was not a rural, so much rural areas, but actually this Heiligenstadt area belongs to Dublin, and Dublin was one of the latest districts, not the latest one, but one of the latest districts that were connected to the city of Vienna. So those complexes, they were constructed mostly on the edges of the city, so in the new working areas, working neighborhoods, for example, in Floridsdorf, in Ottakring, in also in Margareten, and also on some of the streets on Gürtel area. Gürtel is translation from German's belt. It is the second ring. So there is this inner ring that surrounds the historical center of the city, and there are two other rings around this ring. So one is called second line, and the third line is the Gürtel. Gürtel is belt, and this Gürtel was by that time, so behind this Gürtel, Vienna was already actually ended at this Gürtel, at this belt ring, and behind it there were villages, suburbs, so on. So this area was adjusted, was added to the city, to the whole space, whole area of the city. And this is why sometimes when you travel, when you walk along this Gürtel, which is now more or less close to the city center, you might see lots of buildings of the 1920s, 1930s. For example, the series of the buildings on Margareten Gürtel was built also at that time. Let's have a look again at some photos. What we see is that the building itself has the certain aesthetic characteristic, aesthetic sense. For example, we see that there is very visual, obvious middle part, this, and it's open to the street, to Heiligenstädter Straße, and this kind of composition is called in architecture Cour d'honneur, Ehrenhof, so court of honor. It came from the late Renaissance Baroque architecture, from the palaces, and we see that the middle part reminds us of some symbols of that epoch. We are talking about proletarian working class architecture, so of course it should convey this message. It should represent this ideology. So these middle parts, they symbolize, embody either the factories or there may be ships, and of course there are some similarities with Art Deco architecture. For example, look at this pyramid composition. When we speak about Art Deco, first of all, we should consider, we should have in mind the American skyscrapers like Empire State Building or Chrysler Building. They all have this pyramid shape. This is the most classic examples of Art Deco architecture. And even though Karl-Marx-Hof is not an iconic example of Art Deco, it's a mix of different movements. I've shown you functionalism of Adolf Loos and late Otto Wagner, constructivism of Soviet Union or Le Corbusier, but there are also Art Deco motifs. The color, of course, the color is also a very important aspect. Yeah, we see often in the architecture of that time red or orange brown color that was done either by stucco painting. So you see here, for example, this is just a plaster painting, or often also by using the bricks, yeah, clinker bricks. Clinker bricks, they are produced of the, I will show you the photo of, okay, wait a second, I will show you the mouse doesn't work. Yeah, I will show you one photo and then we will return back. Here. Here's the example of clinker bricks. This is almost like a normal brick, but it is produced with the higher temperatures as usual, 1200 degrees, and it makes the brick very, very strong, solid, and also frost resistant. And depends on the temperature and the technology, you can get different shades of red, brown, and this material was cheap, was easy to produce in huge amounts, and also ecological, and of course convenient and proper, because those housing complexes, those ones that we are talking about, they were considered to be built for decades, for many years, not like the many Russian Soviet apartment buildings that were built, were considered to be built for a short time period, just to accommodate the huge amount of people who stayed without place to live. So they were built in short time periods and by using the very cheap materials and so on. And yeah, those ones, they of course much better. What is, yeah, let's understand what was this time, why those apartment buildings were erected. So little bit of history. 1919, February 1919, the Social Democrats, the party, had emerged from national elections as the strongest party, and the Habsburg family had been banished. And like the national parliament, Vienna City Council was dominated by the Social Democrats. We are speaking about the end of the First World War, yeah? But unlike parliament, where the Christian Social Party came to power in 1920s, the city council, so why it's Vienna, Red Vienna, not Red Austria, but Red Vienna. The city council remained in social democratic hands until 1934. So from 1919 to 1934, we can speak about this social democratic movement in political sense, in political area, and also in communal program. Here, sometimes you could see the inscriptions on the buildings that this certain building was built on the money of the communal tax. What it is? This communal tax, housing tax, was introduced in 1919 by the first social democratic governor of Vienna, Jakob Reumann. And he died in 1923. So actually, he didn't really witness those complexes in life. But in 1919, he introduced the housing tax to provide Vienna with the means of institutioning a public housing program. It was meant to fight with the shortage of housing, and the aim was to provide people, working class people, poor people, with very affordable living, and still quite good for that time. What I mean that what we are talking about, the individual flats. So the flats they had different sizes, and most of them not exceeded 40 square meters, so around 38 square meters. Of course, some of you might argue that this is a very small flat and not something really good, but trust me, for that time, when most of people didn't even have any place to live or any separate room to live, it was great. I mean, even nowadays, to have a 40 square meter flat in Vienna is quite good. And I just found an information. I can, if you're interested, I can later probably publish this statistic, what kind of flats existed, because of course there were several types of flats. There were also bigger flats, 48 square meter flats with even individual kitchens. So most of those small flats, they were, of course, they didn't have their own kitchens. I mean, this is understandable, and toilets. But all of those flats, that time, they didn't have the private bathrooms, of course, because this was actually still a big problem. And in some houses, people had the bath also in the beginning of the 20th century. For example, Otto Wagner, when he built when he built 3 houses, it was called Midhouse. Midhouse, it means profit house, so the house that was rented out and was supposed to bring the profit. He built them on his own money, so he bought the area. I'm talking about Naschmarkt area. If you live in Vienna, you know this area, Naschmarkt and linke Wienzeile, so the left street from the Naschmarkt. There are 3 houses two on actually on Linke Winzeile, 38, house number 38 and house number 40. It's Medallion House and Majolika House. I don't have it in my presentation, but you probably know this building anyway. If not, just Google it. And then behind it on Köstlergasse, there is another house. Not so great according to the decoration, but there he also designed the flat for himself, and there he had a bath. And interesting thing is that his bath was even glass, made of glass. Yeah, but this was really something super fancy, super. It's like to have maybe a swimming pool at home, I don't know, your own elevator or whatever. So of course most of people couldn't not only afford it, but it just they didn't have it. But they still had all those features, all these opportunities. Let me show you some photos more, just so that you see that each part, each door, each portal has its own style design. No, not each of them. It's not correct. Of course, if I tell you that each of them, that you would think that they're also eclectic and it then brings the chaos. No. Of course, there is a certain principle there, but as you remember, this complex was formed of several courtyards. Yeah, here Hofe. They all have names, of course. And each of those courtyards has its own style, a little bit. I mean, it's not like they're completely different, but they have their own peculiarities. And this is very important because we are not speaking about some standard buildings. In 1950s, remember Le Corbusier? I showed you some photos of his projects in Marseille and in Berlin. They were more like type standard architecture. In 1920s, the buildings of that time, they were all unique, and also inside this building there were several parts with different areas, zones, and so on. And yeah, the central part, of course, it's the most beautiful and unique. Yeah, look at this balconies. This is all balconies. I mean, of course, this is the decoration, this is the element of decoration, but still everything has a function. Look, it's not just some painting, it's also the convex part. And you see here that many of the flats have balconies. I actually read, I don't know if it's true, but I read that each flat had its balcony or loggia. I don't know if it's really true because it's difficult to say. And this is the portals, the doors. Look at those brutal lines and color, of course, red. Yeah, here's the new and old picture. This is sort of house management office. And here is the photo of one of the courtyards. You see that inside it's simpler, but still quite convenient and comfortable, because we are talking about flats. We're talking about not some palace, not some governmental building. It must be, first of all, comfortable, convenient. And this is from outside Heiligenstädter Straße. They continued here the line is tradition of middle work. Yeah, and now I would like to show you also some important details. First of all, we would see that in many of the Red Vienna buildings, the architects, they repeat some classical elements of architecture. For example, the arches. Arches became one of the terms, yeah, in the architectural vocabulary of that time. So here you see the arch, huge arch, also for cars available here. What about the sculptures? The sculptures, they are not also boring because each of them has its own role, yeah, function. So the sculptures on the facade were created by several masters. So the main artist, the designer of the facade design was Franz Riedel, and among the sculptors were Anton Hanag, Gustinus Ambrosi. And what are those sculptures about? First of all, what is the material? This is the ceramic sculptures. So we see that the most beloved material was at that time was ceramic or beton, for example, rarely stone or wood. And those sculptures, they represent the themes of child welfare, the mother with child, liberation, emancipation, body culture, enlightenment, and so on. And here you can see the laundry building. It's part of this complex, so it's integrated in this complex, but it's like a separate institution, wash salon. And inside this wash salon, this laundry, now there is a museum dedicated to this movement, das Rote Wien, the Red Vienna. It's a small museum, of course, but yet quite interesting in my opinion. So if you want to get to know about this movement a little bit, you should go there. Note that it works only twice a week, on Thursdays and Sundays. This is the interior of wash salon. So you see again the same composition, the same system, a long corridor and the doors that lead to each section. And note that often in such areas the architects, the designers use the ceramic tiles, and they cover with them the floors and also sometimes the walls, because this was the most hygienic material and very easy to clean. Here is also a photo of kindergarten, and as I said, there was also library and clinics. This is not just from Karl Marxhof, but still some old pictures. This is the storage house for all the gardening equipment. Yeah, Red Vienna actually attempted to improve the living conditions of people. This was the aim, yeah, in this post-war city, so the city between two wars, by setting up communal laundries, as I said, yeah, nursery rooms and so on. So this was, first of all, the aim was to provide people with all the needed institutions, areas, and also, what is important, to help with the unemployment problem. So all those institutions, they needed personnel, kindergartens, public swimming pools, libraries, and so on. And those organizations, they employed lots of people. So it already solved several problems. Okay, let's make a little break. I will check if you, yeah, Marina joined us, and Marina has commented that they look very much as medieval wooden saints. The sculptures, right? Yes, and actually also the buildings, they have lots of things to do, yeah, lots of similarities with the fortresses, medieval palaces, or also Baroque palaces. And I will show you some other examples of such associations. And it was even officially called as Volkswohnpalast. Volkswohnpalast means something like palace for people, for folk, yeah, for just people. And it was a critical term. So of course, such architecture, even though it was prominent at that time, yet there were many critical articles, and especially what was criticized as monumentalism and decorativism. I mean, for us, it's already not so decorative, not so beautifully elaborated compared to the architecture of Jugendstil or of historicism. But yeah, for 20s, 30s, and especially after the Second World War, it was already too much. And in Vienna, you can see that 1934 was not the end of this movement. Yeah, I mean, of course, after that time, you know, there was the Nazi fascistic time and so on, but we're not covering this time. But then already again, after the Second World War, there was another wave of this communal social housing program, and the housing complexes of 1950s, 1960s, they are completely different. They really sometimes remind of some Russian Soviet Brezhnev, Khrushchev, Brezhnev buildings. They are banal, they are very, I wouldn't say, yeah, primitive maybe, according to the architectural sense, yeah, they are quite primitive, they are not so interesting architecturally, and they of course are not unique. So you just see the range of the similar buildings. Okay, now I would like to invite you to a little ad time, advertisement time. So I am showing you the links to my socials. Just in the middle of my lecture, I decided to promote a little bit myself while you are all here. Yeah, as you see, this is the screenshots of all my, not all, but most of my blogs. I have 2 Instagram pages. The first one, Vienna City Slickers, is the new blog that I do in English only, and it's mostly dedicated to Vienna. So Vienna and Austria, art, architecture, whatever I find interesting is posted there in English. If you understand Russian, then also follow me on my main Instagram channel, Kunstvi. I don't repeat the content of each blogs. Sometimes I might repeat something, but most of the time the content is different. So if you understand Russian, also follow my English blog. Also, I have the Facebook page, also I have a group, but this is the English page. You can like it. Also, there is a section where you can leave the feedback on this lecture or just on my project. And this YouTube channel, I used to do it only in English before, or in Russian before, sorry, in Russian before. It was just a Russian YouTube channel because I used to do all my lectures online since March because of pandemic. But now I decided that maybe once a month I can make some open lecture on Vienna on my YouTube channel in English too. So why not? And if you want to follow it or don't want to miss it, please subscribe to my channel. And this way you will really support me. And of course, leave the comments, likes, and so on. You know what to do. And yeah, by the way, sometimes people tell me, yeah, I would like to leave the comment or subscribe, but I'm not registered to YouTube. I don't have a YouTube profile. Well, I will not force you to do that, of course, but if you can make it for me, if you can make the profile and follow me, so subscribe and like and leave a couple of comments, it would be a really great contribution to my work, because you know that each comment raises my videos in the ratings and it helps me to get more new viewers and subscribers, and yeah, hence new audience, and also maybe finally start earning something on YouTube, because you know that only after 1,000 of subscribers I can monetize my videos. Only after 1,000 subscribers. I now have a little bit over 500 subscribers, so 500 more I need to get a couple of cents, not even $1 for a video. Okay, but of course I'm doing this not because of that, but it's just important for me to have an audience, enough people. And once again, as I already told you, in the description there are also links, not links, but all the datas where you can send me some money if you want it. And for those of you who have PayPal account, you can even do it now so easily. You don't even have to enter manually my email, the email address where my PayPal account is registered. Yeah, I mean, you can just copy and paste, but you can even make it easier. Just take your phones, your cell phones, open the camera and scan right now this QR code, and yeah, and donate. I will leave it for a few seconds for you so that you I'll check if anyone left comments. Okay, thank you very much for nice reviews. I just read it. Yeah, we have not so much material left, but I will show you some more. So stay tuned. Okay, yeah. Well, anyway, all the information is below. It was just some ad time. Werbung. Рекламная пауза. Okay, now Now I will show you another housing complex, smaller one. So the Karl Marxhof, I told you, it was, just imagine, let me come back to it. It was here, you can see it. It was 1200 meters long, and it contained at that time, because now of course less, since the flats are bigger usually, it contained 1600 flats. 1600 flats. So 1600, yeah. And also one thing, a little bit about numbers, but as I said, yeah, if you want, I can make some table and post in my socials, in my blogs, Instagram, Facebook, and so on, some statistic information, because I don't want now to give you all these numbers, because probably it's interesting for you, but you will not understand anyway while hearing. By the way, about the literature, yeah, I will show you the books that I used for this lecture also. Yeah, and some numbers more. How many flats, how many singular flats from 30, so around the average size of each flat was around 40 square meters. So between 30, I believe 34 or 38 and even 60 square meters, 60 something. So the average was 48, yeah, between 38 and 57, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. How many flats were erected? From 1919 to 1934, so how many years? It's 15 years, yeah, for 15 years, more than 61,000 flats, apartments in Vienna, only in Vienna, 61,000 more, a little bit more, 100 something, 6100. And yeah, this is actually an extremely high amount. Just imagine, and I mean, of course, each flat belonged to one family, so in each flat there were several people living, yeah, so it helped millions of people, yeah, to survive, to live. And nowadays, what is in this flat? They're still communal flats. In German, it's called Gemeindebauen. I might be a little bit wrong, maybe I'm a little bit mistaken, yeah, about this certain translation, but I believe it might be translated as a communal housing. So it's not a private house, not a private flat, but you still pay rent, of course, but it costs much less. It's not given to some very, very, very poor people who have no job completely, no money, and so on. It doesn't mean that this is some social housing for extremely poor people, for refugees, and so on. They also get such the rooms, the flats in such buildings, but it's another program. I'm talking about just a certain range of flats, apartments that you can rent if you satisfy some certain criteria, yeah, your age, your salary, the amount of square meters that you are currently having for a member, for each member of your family. So it's not so easy to get such flat, but if you get it, you're lucky, because you pay twice less than people in the normal private houses do. For example, we live not in Gemeindebau, and if it was a Gemeindebau, then we would pay, yeah, probably twice less, or almost maybe 40% less. Okay, so yeah, not 40%, I mean you understand what I mean. So almost twice less, a little bit maybe more than, yeah. And about the books I promised you to show. So I will also publish you the information about that books. This book you can find in internet. So we ordered it in internet. This is the book called Rotes Wien. I hope you can see it now. If not, I will anyway publish the photo. It's Falters City Walks. Gehen sehen, genießen. It's in German. And the author is Inge Podbretsky. Okay, so it's not a big book, but it gives you several walking routes in different areas of Vienna, and contains also good photos. So, and yeah, there is also a map. Okay, and the second book that I also used is the actually English book, The Short History of Art in Vienna. There is also a version in German. This book was written by Dr. Martina Pippel. Martina Pippel is my advisor, the head of my PhD work, Frau Pippel. I'm writing with her my dissertation, and she has written this book. It's about all the periods of Vienna, so from the ancient Roman time till the contemporary architecture, of course, arts. It's short history, but very good, very well written, and yeah, it costs 10 euros. So if you want to buy, it's really affordable. I don't know the price of this one. Yeah, 13 euros. So all the books are affordable. There are many books on RED Vienna in the Library of Art History Institute in Vienna. But I haven't seen them in the shop. So I don't know if you can really order them online now or buy somewhere in the shops. Okay, I'm reading now the comments. Yeah, Marina asked the question, who financed the construction and maintenance of those buildings? Yeah, probably you joined a little bit later. All those buildings were erected on tax money, which is a very socialistic thing. This tax was introduced in 1919 by the governor Jakob Reumann. He was the first social democratic governor of Vienna, and yeah, this tax, on money of this tax, the first wave of the buildings was built, and then this tax again after the Second World War also helped to build another series of houses that were cheaper and, as I said, more standard, but still the most important is the aim that they provided people get their houses and flats, because we understand that in the late 40s and the 50s it was even more important, at least not less important, because during the World War many people lost their houses, their flats and so on, because some parts of Vienna were really damaged during the Second World War, yeah, not to mention the people who just came from other cities, from other areas, yeah. So everything is on taxpayer money, and especially, yeah, this time. So if you're interested, I can give you the link later to about this tax. I can find it right now, but doesn't matter. So yeah, let's check the other buildings. Yeah, and about the comment of Juanita, yeah, I really like this topic. I really like it, and I must say that I am I'm really fascinated by the diversity of these building complexes. I will show you just a few of them, maybe 5, 6, yeah, but there are so many, and in different areas. For example, in Favoriten, there are many of them. And if you look at them, you see that they all are different, and they have sculptures, they have ceramic tiles, they have fountains inside, they have everything, pictures, frescoes, and even those, I call them banal complexes of 50s, each of them has something unique. For example, a mosaic panel, yeah, or some fresco, some picture, and so something artistic always was on each building. And now, I will return to the next house that was also built by Karl N. Remember, Karl N is the author of Karl-marx-hof. Karl N. In German. Svoboda Hof. I don't know if it's Svoboda or Svoboda. I believe it's Svoboda. How correctly to pronounce? Yeah, I don't know exactly. I mean, in Russian it would be Svoboda, of course, Freiheit, freedom, but probably it's Svoboda. Yeah, so Slavic roots of his name. Emil Svoboda. He lived in this house. So this house was named after him. After his death, he died. He was sentenced to death. He was executed in 1934. Who was Karl Svoboda? He was activist, politician, yeah, activist of the resistance movement of socialists against, of course, fascist, Nazi, member of the Republican Protection League, Republikanischer Schutzbund. He established in 1923, not he, but he was one of the activists who established in 1923 this Protection League. Yeah? He was one of the activists of the Social Democratic Party. And yeah, he was sentenced to death during the Austrian Civil War, so-called February Uprising of 1934. Many people were killed and executed in this year. Yeah, and this person lived the house since it was built till his death. This house is literally next to Karl-marx-hof. So Karl-marx-hof, and next building is Svoboda Hof. And you see, it was even built a little bit earlier than Karl-marx-hof. I just think that they were being built at the same time, but just since Svoboda Hof is smaller, it was finished earlier. So this house had 59 flats, and the facade to Heiligenstädter Straße is plain, but we still see the favorite element of Karl N, the balconies that goes out a little bit from the plain wall of the building. And also we see here loggias, balconies connected to each other. Yeah. Yeah, then what else I want to show you is this monumental, huge, really big complex called Royman Hof. Remember who was Royman? Jacob Royman was the first governor of Vienna after Socialist Party came to power, and he died in 1923. So this Hof, this housing complex, was erected after his death and was named in honor of Jakob Reumann. I see his sculptural portrait here on the left. So the architect of this building is Hubert Gessner. It's another student of Otto Wagner. So we will be talking today about students of Otto Wagner, of the next generation. Hubert Gessner, you should really check him out because he has built many interesting buildings, and some of them were even quite Jugendstilisch. Yeah, so belong to Jugendstil, but some of them were already very constructivist and even modernistic. But one of the most famous buildings by him that you, people who live in Vienna, probably have seen is this also monumental house. This is the insurance office, insurance bureau of the Austrian Railways. It's also Linke Windzeile, not far from those Otto Wagner's houses, Naschmarkt. You see, 1912 is the date. So officially, still it's Habsburg time, Empire time. It's even before the war. So it's completely different time, different epoch, and it was period between Jugendstil and Art Deco. But we see that Hubert Gessner, as a very talented and attentive student, he followed he listened to the lesson of his teacher Otto Wagner very well, and he created the building that continued this idea of proto-functionalistic building and pre-Art Deco facade. So when you go to Wikipedia or any other internet resource, you would see that this building is called Art Nouveau Jugendstil building, but I disagree. I don't find here anything Jugendstil. I would call it better neoclassical. It's actually one of the features of Art Deco that the architects, they return to classical proportions, to order, to columns, capitals, all those elements, but they interpreted them differently. And of course, they used something from Jugendstil. This is impossible to just ignore 15 years of a new style. Yeah? And so the same architect, look, 1912, in 1920s, 1924, 26, Hubert Gessner would be working on the construction of Reumann Hof. Wow, this is one of my favorite buildings at all in Vienna, but of course among RED VIENNA, Karl-Marx-hof and Reumann Hof, they are classic. They are classic. And this building was criticized the most. Remember, I told you that it was even called Volkswohnpalast, so the palace for the folk, for the people. Remember, yeah, this architecture movement was supposed to be opposite to what existed in Vienna and in other European cities for centuries. All these noble, aristocratic palaces. But Hubert Gessner had a good education, you know, he knew the history of architecture very well, and he combined several elements. And in his building, and still he created very contemporary, very modern building for that time. You wouldn't call it a historistic building or some epigonistic building. It's not even postmodernism in the sense that, you know, postmodernistic architects, they just repeat something that they heard, so dreamt in their projects. No, this is the Red Vienna building, but it has, among this Art Deco and constructivistic and functionalistic features, it has also some classical influences, some sources. Here you can see it even well, the details. Remember the arches. I told you that the arch will become one of the main elements, and you see here arch also frame the balconies, and here the portals, and also this motif of wave, very talented approach. Also, of course, it is very symmetrical. What he has quoted in this building, he quoted some Viennese famous monuments. First of all, for example, this Gloriette. It's not really a copy, no, of course not, but this arch loggia motif element was definitely taken from the classical architecture, from Baroque time, from late Baroque time, from Classicism, and from the already historicism, so time of historical architecture of the end of the 19th century. So if you take this lower part, you can move it, copy and paste here, and a little bit change it. Let's see how this, where is this complex located? Here is Reumanhof, and here are other Red Vienna apartment complexes on Margaretengürtel. Remember I told you about Gürtel. Gürtel is belt. It's the third ring of Vienna, so the circle street, and you see that there are several complexes. Of course, it's not as big as Karl-Marx-hof. There are none of such in the world. It's the longest, the biggest complex, but still Reumanhof is big. It contains 478 flats. 478 flats, and the size of each flat varied from 25 square meter to 60 square meters. So 25, 60, I would say it's according to even contemporary standards. Also, besides flats, as usual, there were 11 ateliers, 19 shops. 19 shops. Yeah, now I believe there are less, of course. Workshops, laundry, kindergarten, library, cafe, and there is still Reumann Cafe, but I'm not sure. I mean, it looks a little bit more contemporary than 1920s, so probably the interior hasn't survived. Yeah, and you see here it's very well seen. Erbaut von der Gemeinde Wien in den Jahren ja, 1924, 1925 aus den Mitteln der Wohnbausteuer, which is translated as this building is house was built by the Gemeinde Wien, the society, society, probably community of Vienna, in the years 1924-1925 on money, on wages of the on the means of this housing Steuer, housing taxes. So on the money, on the means of taxes. Look inside, there is everything for your pleasant time. There is a fountain, there are nice gardens. Also, we see this beautiful metal fence, portal, and so on. And also look at the images, the symbols of the proletarians, all the instruments, equipment, and so on. So once you are there, it's I believe the nearest metro station is actually Margaretengürtel, I believe it's called, even like that. And 5 minutes from that, and you are in this house. You can even see it from outside. And another one that I want to show you is Rabenhof. The name Rabenhof comes from the street Rabenstraße, where it is located. It's located between the streets. So one of the streets is Rabenstraße. It's the 3rd district. And you see again the arch. Now the shape of this arch is Gothic arch. Very also curious detail. Library here, still there. City library. Actually, this city library system was also established at that time. So nowadays, all people can take books in any district, no matter where you live, no matter where you registered, and return books also in any district, and they are all connected. So you pay something like, I don't know how much you pay, because I'm not a member of this library, but I believe something maybe like, I don't know, 30 euros per year, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And you can use all the city libraries. Of course, I'm a member of University Library. Yeah, and look at this clinker bricks. The term clinker bricks, I already told you about this bricks. The term clinker comes from the sound that those bricks do when they clink. Clink, 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 clink. Yeah, so in English it's also clinker bricks, in German clinker bricks, in Russians клинкерный кирпич, if you want to check this information, yeah, to read more. Wash salon again, so laundries were important, of course. And inside this complex there is a theater, Rabenhof. So it's more like musical cabaret theater. The architects of this building were Hermann Eichinger and Heinrich Schmidt. I missed the letter H here. I'm so sorry. It's of course SCH Schmidt, of course. I'm sorry. Schmidt. And the same architects, they will be the same architects, created many buildings of that time. And one of the most famous one is the Novomatic Forum on Karlsplatz, just on the opposite side from the Secession building. So here is Secession. You see the part of this even strap. This is an example of classic Art Deco. In Vienna, there is Art Deco architecture, and actually I was even thinking that maybe next topic of our lecture will be will be on Art Deco, but all of those Art Deco-ish buildings, they were built before 1925. So remember, 1925, it's official time of the beginning of Art Deco, official time. But in Vienna, those buildings and houses were erected in 1910, 1912, and so on. But this Novomatic Forum is the real, genuine Art Deco example. So if you're interested in Art Deco lecture, let me know. Of course, Jugendstil, I believe it's also interesting, but it's such a huge topic. So I would choose probably some architects or some areas because it's just impossible. Even this Red Vienna, we talk about some little, yes, some few examples. Yeah, the question Svetlana asked, is there a map with all these buildings from the lecture mapped? Of course there is, but not prepared now. I will make for you, okay? I will make and publish. Of course, there are all of them. I mean, they are all located quite far from each other. So if I put it now, you would just see that they're around Vienna in different parts. So yeah, Döbling is, so karl-marx-hof is north and west. Yeah, so Favoriten, this, I will show you Amalienbad, it's south and so on. So it's different areas. I just chose them because they are the most famous ones, not because they are located close to each other. So yeah, this was Austrian Transport Office before. Also, they are authors. Oh, sorry, I haven't. Yeah, they were also authors of those houses. For example, this Barenmühle, it's even seen here. This is this Barenmühle here, see, brownish. So already quite, yeah, different. So you see it's post Red Vienna time. It's called Black Vienna. So yeah, one more term is Black Vienna. Black Vienna is the Nazi time. And yeah, Reisenmann, Hof. And yeah, I believe this is the last building that I want to show you here. This is the last. It's not a housing complex. It's not the flat. It's the swimming pool. It's the communal swimming pool. So Amalienbad, it's called Amalienbad. Yeah, what is peculiar that this building is also an example of true Art Deco. What is the feature is this pyramid composition, the Turm in German, Bashня. Sometimes I forget the words. Tower. The tower in the center. And let me show you the examples of the American Art Deco. Here are the drawings that were meant to be the proto design for most of the skyscrapers, among them also Empire State Building and Chrysler Building, the two most famous New York skyscrapers. So, Saarinen, Finnish architect, Hugh Ferris, American one. And here we are on the right, Fisher Building in Detroit. You see this pyramid. You see the step-like. When I say pyramid, I mean those steps that go up, and the tower is becoming thinner on the top. This is later version of Art Deco, more classic one, and we see it in England, and they rather prefer the classical traditional architecture. This is one more example, department store buildings in Los Angeles. You see, it a little bit reminds us also of medieval architectures and medieval cathedrals, right? With this campanile, with this clock tower. But this is not a clock tower. Yeah? This is either the office building or the flat apartment building. And let's return to our swimming pool, Amalienbad. Amalienbad was named after Amalie Pölzer. She was a politica and founder of the Society of Social Democratic Women and Girls, and she was also one of the activists of general educational program for all people, not regarding of their gender and social class. Yeah, and she died in 1921, and yeah, this swimming pool was called in honor, in fame of Amalie Pölzer. And during the opening, the governor Karl Seitz, he called this swimming pool as the first bad is swimming, is the first swimming pool in proletarian quarter, the spot in Proletenviertel. So meaning that there must be more and more and more, and that's true. In each area appeared big public swimming pools. And also he said, when this building was opened, he said that, look at this, this area, the 10th district, is called Favoriten, favorite. And before it was a place for, it was a place where the members of Habsburg family and all his favorites had their palaces, their grounds, and so on. And now this area, this neighborhood, is turned to the working class area. And we look at this building, it reminds us of palaces of medieval Renaissance, castles, but it is a place for working people, for proletarians, and it was called, what was named after a proletarian and proletarian woman. And besides the shapes that probably also connect this building with other Red Vienna complexes, the details are truly Art Deco. Look at this wonderful elements over the portal. This roof is covered by ceramic plates. Also we see the sculptures here, and of course the sculpture there are not like the statues on the facade of Karl Marxhof that were symbolical, representation of new ideas, new tendencies, like work, like liberation, equality, and so on. Here we see just allegoric sculptures that represent the swimming beauties, you know, like it was in the 19th century, in the 18th century, in Rococo time, Rococo, yeah, so the middle of the 18th century. What is different? Yeah, maybe just a little bit the proportion and the stylistic interpretation, but still this is the same thing. So you see that Art Deco was again the step, I wouldn't say backwards, no, but step to connect with traditions. This is why the Art Deco architects, they were inspired by classical architecture and also by Oriental architecture of Islamic countries, of in ancient Egypt. Look at those triangles. This is also very popular element. Notice it sometimes on houses. You might see it that, for example, there is a door and such a triangle crown. Looks like a crown. Yeah, so this is outside. And now I will turn myself off so that you would enjoy fully the interior, because this is fascinating. Look at this. This is the hall, entrance hall. Remember, I told you that the architects of Art Nouveau, Art Deco, 1920s, they loved Oriental architecture, and here I believe you see lots of quotes, citation of different traditions. Yeah, here is Indian elements, Islamic ornaments. It's abstract mostly, and also reminds us of some shapes of buildings. Yeah, it looks like some mosque probably, rather than the swimming pool. Geometry, straight lines, and abstract patterns. So Jugendstil Art Nouveau liked more the certain patterns of foliage, of flowers, of animals, so something that is connected to nature, and we can, most of the time, we can distinguish what is depicted by, but Art Deco design is mostly abstract. And here is another example of a public swimming pool in Vienna of that time, also Art Deco, and not so monumental, of course. It's Otto Wagner, 16th. Very nice. Look at this red, white. I like it even more than Amalian, but I don't know. And I have shown you the examples of Art Deco, classic Art Deco. And now I would like to show you the interior design of this style, so that you understand why Art Deco must be so bright, so colorful. So this I have already shown you. And look, for example, at Cabaret Folies Bergère in Paris, Folies Bergère Cabaret. Outside is already quite much, but inside it's just crazy. Just crazy. And this is 1926. Wow. Look at this. Have you been inside? I haven't. Only outside. It looks really like some psycho film. Or, for example, Amsterdam building, movie theater, Tuschinski. Again, those step-like shapes and elements. Yeah. Okay, so, and this was the last topic